could exploit. Every stolen kiss, every whispered word was a risk she was willing to take, yet the cost loomed large. Joran's voice crackled over the communication lines, sharp and urgent. Reinforcements needed at Sector 7. Selwyn's forces are converging faster than expected. Ilara's hand tightened around Kale's. We're running out of time. Kale nodded, eyes blazing with determination. Then we fly tonight. No more hiding. No more waiting. As the city trembled on the brink of upheaval, their love fragile yet fierce became a beacon for all who dared to dream of freedom. But with every heartbeat, the question loomed, could hearts on the line survive the storm to come? The night deepened, and the floating city held its breath, waiting for the dawn that might bring salvation or shatter their world forever. The dawn broke gently over the floating city, casting a pale golden hue across the intricate lattice of pipes, gears, and steam vents that defined its skyline. From the balcony of the royal palace, Princess Ilara stood tall, her silver hair shimmering like strands of moonlight caught in the morning sun. Below, the city stirred with a restless energy, a vibration that pulsed through every cast and corner, a sign that the rebellion was no longer whispering in the shadows, but roaring into life. Ilara's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and fierce hope. The weight of her lineage pressed heavily upon her shoulders. Yet beneath the silk layers of her restrictive gown, she felt a fire kindling, a fire that had been smouldering since the day she first glimpsed the world beyond her gilded cage. Now, as the city's fractures deepened, that fire was ready to ignite. Inside the grand hall of the council chambers, tension hung thick like the steam that powered the city's engines. Lord Vorik sat at the head of the long, polished table, his cold grey eyes scanning the faces of the council members, each one a pillar of the caste system he so desperately sought to preserve. His dark military attire gleamed under the flickering gaslights, the ornate embroidery a stark contrast to the grim set of his jaw. We cannot allow chaos to unravel the order that holds this city aloft, Varric declared, his voice low but commanding. The caste system is not merely tradition, it is the foundation of our survival. Those who threaten it are enemies of the city itself, but outside these walls, the city was changing. In the shadowy depths beneath the polished streets, Kale and Joran huddled with a growing circle of rebels. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, punctuated by the rhythmic clink of tools and the whispered strategizing of those who dared to dream of a different future. Kale's dark, soot-streaked face was set with determination as he addressed the group. We've repaired the engines, but the real work begins now. We take control of the city's mechanisms, the heart that beats beneath the caste's lies. We show them that the city belongs to all of us. Joran, ever the pragmatist, nodded. We must be precise. One wrong move and Varric's forces will crush us before the rebellion takes flight. Meanwhile, Myra darted through the twisting alleys with practiced agility. Her curly auburn hair bounced with each swift step, and her sharp dark eyes flicked nervously around her. She carried messages between factions, bridging the dangerous gap between the upper and lower castes. Her loyalty to Ilara and the rebellion fueled her courage, even as the threat of betrayal loomed ever closer. Back at the palace, Ilara prepared herself for a moment that could change everything. The city assembly was convening, and she was to speak, not as a princess upholding tradition, but as a leader rallying her people to break the chains of caste. The room was packed with nobles, mechanics, and citizens from every stratum, the air thick with anticipation and unease. Taking the podium, Ilara's voice rang clear and unwavering. For too long we have lived divided, bound by invisible walls, built from fear and ancient laws. But the city we cherish cannot thrive on inequality and oppression. It is time to break these chains, to rebuild not just our machines, but our society itself. A murmur spread through the crowd, some faces lit with hope, others twisted with anger. Lord Varric's icy gaze locked onto Elara, fury flickering beneath his composed exterior. "Princess," he rasped, "you tread dangerously close to treason." Elara met his stare without flinching. "I tread where the future demands. The city will rise as one, or it will fall divided." The assembly erupted into a chaotic mix of cheers and jeers. Outside, the city echoed with the sounds of machinery revving and distant shouts. The rebellion was mobilizing, inspired by Ilaros' bold stand, but the fight was far from over. Lord Varric would not relinquish power without a battle, and the fractures within the city threatened to tear it apart. Yet, for the first time in generations, a new hope had taken flight, carried on the wings of defiant hearts, ready to soar beyond the limits of caste and tradition. As Elara descended from the podium, Kale stepped forward from the crowd, their eyes meeting in a silent vow. Together, they would lead the city through its darkest hour, toward a dawn of freedom. The gears of rebellion were turning, and the sky itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when the chains would finally break. The first light of dawn stretched across the floating city like a tentative promise, bathing the spires and steam vents in a soft golden glow. At the edge of the upper city's landing platform, Princess Elara stood beside Kale, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration that threatened to overwhelm her. The ancient flying machine, a relic thought lost to time, rested before them, its brass and iron frame gleaming faintly with the early sun, steam hissing softly from its aged pipes. Elara adjusted the leather gloves she wore, a stark contrast to the silken gowns that usually enveloped her. Her silver hair was pulled back tightly, revealing the pale blue eyes that now burned with fierce determination. Kale's sword streaked and focused, moved with practiced ease, fingers dancing over the complex array of levers and gauges that controlled the engines. Beside him, old Tom watched closely, his eyes reflecting both pride and anxiety. "Are you ready?" Kale asked, his voice low but steady. Elara nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "For too long, we've been grounded by walls, by rules, by fear. Today, we fly not just for ourselves, but for everyone who's been held down." A gentle breeze stirred as the ancient engines sputtered to life, releasing bursts of steam that mingled with the morning mist. The platform trembled beneath their feet, the deep mechanical roar echoing through the city's iron heart. Elara felt the vibration in her bones, the sound a wild song of rebellion and hope. With a steadying breath, she gripped the controls. Engines stable, initiating lift. Kale's hands moved swiftly, adjusting valves and fine-tuning the pressure. Power levels rising. Hold tight. Slowly, the flying machine began to rise, the ground falling away beneath them as the city's sprawling expanse receded into the haze. The cacophony of gears and steam softened into a steady hum, replaced by the rush of wind and the distant calls of skybirds. Elara's pulse quickened as the weight of centuries of oppression seemed to lift with them. The clouds parted, revealing a vast canvas painted in delicate shades of pink and lavender. Here, above the rigid caste lines and iron laws, there was only freedom. Suddenly, a sharp sputter jarred the machine, a faltering cough that sent a shudder through the frame. Kale's eyes flashed with alarm as he reached for the emergency valves. "Hold on," he shouted, working furiously to stabilize the engines. Elara tightened her grip, the world narrowing to the rhythm of their synchronized efforts. Minutes stretched like hours before the engines roared back to full power, and the flying machine surged upward with renewed vigor. Relief and triumph mingled in their chests as they soared higher, the city a patchwork of light and shadow beneath them. "We did it," Alara whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief and hope. Cale smiled, the first genuine expression of peace she had seen in him. "This is just the beginning." As the sun climbed higher, casting golden beams that danced on the machine's brass surfaces, Alara and Cale shared a glance that spoke of dreams realized and futures reclaimed. Their flight was more than a daring escape. It was a declaration, an unyielding stand against the chains of caste and fear. Below, the city stirred, its inhabitants catching sight of the ancient engines cutting through the sky, a symbol of change and unity that could no longer be ignored. And high above, amid the endless blue, two souls soared free, bound not by birth or station, but by love and the unbreakable will to rewrite their destinies. The wind whispered promises of a new dawn, and Alara knew, with every fiber of her being, that the sky was no longer the limit, it was their beginning. But as the flying machine sailed toward the horizon, a shadow lingered, a reminder that the forces determined to maintain the old world would not yield so easily. Their flight was a beacon, yes, but also a challenge, and the true test of their courage was yet to come. Alara tightened her jaw, eyes fixed on the endless sky ahead. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Cale nodded, the green fire in his eyes blazing brighter than ever. Together, and with that, they vanished into the clouds, carrying the hopes of a city yearning to be free. The first light of dawn spilled gently over the floating city, casting golden hues upon the intricate gears and soaring spires that had once symbolized division but now shimmered as beacons of unity. From her vantage point atop the central platform, Princess Alara felt the cool morning breeze against her face, her silver hair catching the light like threads of starlight woven into the fabric of a new era. Beside her, Cale stood tall, his soot-streaked face softened by the quiet pride that shone in his sharp green eyes. Gone were the days when their love had to hide in shadows. Today was the dawn of open skies and open hearts. Below them, a sea of faces from every caste, noble, artisan, mechanic, and laborer alike, gathered in joyous anticipation. Children, some clutching rudimentary flying devices crafted from scraps. Others, adorned in newly issued uniforms of the city's first inclusive flying academy, buzzed with excitement. The air was thick with the scent of fresh oil, steam, and blooming hope. It was a symphony of change, a melody born from years of whispered rebellion and secret dreams. Alara's gaze swept over the crowd, landing on familiar faces. Myra, her ever-loyal handmaid and fierce protector, wove through the throng with graceful ease, her curly auburn hair bouncing as she exchanged smiles and nods. The gleam in Myra's dark eyes mirrored the fire that had fueled their fighter fire, now tempered by the promise of peace. Nearby, Joran stood by one of the restored flying engines, his broad shoulders relaxed yet proud. The hum of the machinery blended with the cheers and laughter, a harmonious chorus that echoed through the city's floating platforms. Cale reached out, taking Alora's hand in his, their fingers intertwining effortlessly. "We made this happen," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Alara nodded, her pale blue eyes reflecting the vast expanse of the open sky. Together, the ceremony began with a flourish. Banners emblazoned with the new city emblem unfurled, and the mayor, a representative chosen from the newly formed council that included voices from all castes, stepped forward to address the crowd. His words were simple yet profound, a testament to the journey they had undertaken. Today, We cast aside the chains of division and soar into a future where every citizen, regardless of birth, is free to dream, to learn, and to fly. This is our new dawn. Cheers erupted, the sound rolling like thunder across the floating city. Children took their first tentative steps onto the flying platforms, guided by instructors who had once been outcasts, but were now pioneers of progress. The sight was a balm to Ilara's soul, the laughter, the unrestrained joy, the mingling of castes once separated by iron and steam. Yet, amidst the celebration, a shadow lingered at the edge of the plaza. Lord Vorik stood apart, his tall frame silhouetted against the awakening sky. His cold grey eyes, once filled with the ruthless determination to preserve an old order, now softened with a resigned contemplation. The ornate military attire that had marked his authority was replaced by subdued clothing, a visual surrender to the tides of change. He watched, not with defiance, but with a solemn acknowledgement that the city he once ruled had been reborn. Ilara's heart ached with the weight of victory, the cost borne by friends lost, the sacrifices made, and the uncertain road ahead. Yet, as Kale squeezed her hand, she found strength in their shared resolve. "This is only the beginning," she murmured. "And we'll face it together," Kale promised. As the first flying lessons took flight, the city itself seemed to breathe anew. The clang of gears and hiss of steam were no longer sounds of oppression, but the heartbeat of a community united. The sky, once a symbol of unreachable dreams, now welcomed all who dared to ascend. Ilara looked up, envisioning a future where caste lines blurred beneath the endless blue, where love and hope soared higher than any machine. The journey had been perilous, and the cost steep. But as the city embraced its new dawn, she dared to believe that the greatest flights were yet to come. And so, beneath the vast expanse of the open sky, the princess and the mechanic stood side by side, symbols of a world transformed. Their love, a beacon, lighting the path forward. The city thrummed with possibility, its gears turning not to divide, but to uplift, and with every heartbeat, every flight, they rewrote the story of their floating world. The future awaited, as boundless as the sky itself. The soft tap of rain against the stained glass windows of the royal chamber was a quiet lullaby, masking the storm raging within Princess Ilaros' heart. She sat, curled on the velvet chaise, a bundle of fragile yellowed letters resting in her lap. The aroma of lavender, mingled with the faint scent of machine oil, lingered as she unfolded the delicate pages, her pale blue eyes tracing the elegant script of a woman she had only known in fragmented memories, her mother. The letters were a secret legacy, hidden away in a forgotten drawer of the royal archives, uncovered only by Ilara's restless curiosity. Each word was a whisper from the past, a confession of rebellion and hope penned in shadows. Her mother's voice, vibrant and courageous, spoke of doubts about the rigid caste system that bound their floating city and the suffocating chains it imposed on those both above and below. Ilara's breath caught as she read the lines describing secret meetings with mechanics and artisans, plans to mend the city not just through gears and steam, but through unity and equality. The weight of her mother's sacrifices settled heavily on her shoulders, loss, exile, and relentless defiance. Tears welled in Ilara's eyes, blurring the ink, yet a fierce resolve kindled in her chest. This was no longer just her fight, it was her inheritance. Outside, the city groaned and hissed with the steady pulse of steam engines and spinning gears, a mechanical heartbeat threatening to falter. Kale joined her on the rooftop terrace, his soot-streaked face softened by the twilight glow. His sharp green eyes met hers, a silent question lingering in the air. "I found her letters," Ilara confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Mother was like Ustri, dreamed of a city where no one was bound by caste. Kale's hand brushed hers, tentative but sure, grounding her in the moment. Then we carry her dream now, together, their fingers intertwined, a fragile tether amidst the turbulence of rebellion and loss. The city below stretched endlessly, a tapestry of brass and steam, its soaring machines promising freedom yet tethered by tradition. Meanwhile, in the shadowed courtyards beneath the gilded towers, Mira's silhouette moved with purposeful grace. Her training was a secret rebellion, in itself a dance of steel and shadow that sharpened her resolve and guarded her heart. Each precise strike of her wooden sword echoed the sacrifices made by those unseen in the struggle for change. Her own forbidden love flickered like a flame, fragile yet fierce, a mirror to Ilara and Kale's bond. In a cluttered workshop filled with the scent of oil and old parchment, old Tom labored over intricate blueprints and worn tools. His hands, weathered by decades of invention and loss, trembled slightly as he recounted tales of past heroes and martyrs to Kale. The knowledge he guarded was a beacon in the encroaching darkness, a testament to both the cost and promise of rebellion. "Every revolution leaves scars," Tom murmured, "but from those wounds new wings grow." Kale absorbed the wisdom, the weight of history fueling his determination. Ilara's discovery had reignited the spark within them, all a reminder that the fight was not just for survival, but for a future where flying dreams were no longer shackled by caste. As the night deepened, Ilara stood once more by the window, gazing out over the city that had been both her cage and her calling. Her mother's legacy echoed in every gear and steam vent, in every whispered hope and hidden defiance. The path ahead was fraught with peril and sacrifice, but it was hers to walk. With Kale's hand firm in hers and the rebellion's heartbeat growing stronger, Ilara embraced the dawn of her own transformation. The echoes of the past were not chains, but wings ready to lift them all toward a new horizon. But even as hope kindled, shadows loomed. The city's fragile peace trembled on the brink, and the price of rebellion was yet to be fully revealed. Would the sacrifices of those before them be enough to break the cycle? The night held its breath, waiting for the dawn. And so, with the weight of legacy and the fire of change burning bright, Ilara stepped forward into the uncertain light, ready to face whatever storms the future might bring. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the floating city, illuminating the bustling streets of the newly unified metropolis with a golden light that seemed to promise endless possibilities. Mira stepped confidently through the marketplace, her fingers intertwined with those of her lover, a soldier who had once been confined to the lowest caste, now walking freely beside her as an equal citizen. The air was thick with the mingled scents of fresh bread, oil, and blooming flowers from the garden terraces that now welcomed all, regardless of birth or station. For Mira, this was a world reborn. Gone were the days of whispered secrets and stolen moments. Here, under the open sky, she could laugh without fear, her auburn curls bouncing as she smiled at the vendors and children playing nearby. Her lover's eyes sparkled with the same joy, their shared past of hardship now a foundation for a hopeful future. The city's transformation was not just physical but deeply personal, breaking down barriers that had once seemed as unyielding as the iron gears that powered their world. Meanwhile, high above the streets, Joran stood on the balcony of a newly rebuilt workshop. The steady hum of machines mingled with the joyful chatter of citizens working side by side, repairing what had been broken and creating what had once only been dreamed of. His broad shoulders relaxed under the soft sky, the weight of past struggles giving way to a calm determination. He had fought for change, but now his mission had evolved to nurture peace and unity, to ensure that the flames of rebellion did not consume the fragile hope now blooming across the city. Joran's thoughts turned to plans laid out before him. Communal workshops where mechanics from all castes could share knowledge. Councils formed not by birthright, but by merit and vision. And programs to rebuild trust between communities long divided. The past was a shadow that could no longer dictate their future. Here, in the heart of the city, he saw a path toward healing that was as intricate and vital as the machines he loved. Not far from Joran's vantage point, Elara and Kale met in the royal garden, a sanctuary transformed from a symbol of isolation into a place of unity. The scent of blooming jasmine and wildflowers filled the air, mingling with the distant laughter of children learning to fly on simple gliders, a dream once reserved for the privileged, now a right for all. Elara's silver hair shimmered in the sunlight, her pale blue eyes reflecting the deep emotion she felt as she reached out to Kale, whose soot-streaked face softened with affection. They stood close, hands brushing, hearts beating with the memory of hardships endured and the promise of a shared future. The barriers that had once kept them apart had crumbled, replaced by a delicate trust and fierce hope. Their love was no longer forbidden but celebrated, a beacon guiding the city toward a new era. Elsewhere, Mira's role had blossomed beyond her duties as handmaid and confidant. She now led training sessions in self-defense, her sharp eyes watching over a diverse group of young men and women from all castes. The clatter of wooden swords and the steady rhythm of practiced movements echoed through the training yard. Myra's voice was firm but encouraging, her presence commanding respect and inspiring confidence. These sessions were more than physical training. They were a symbol of empowerment and solidarity, a living testament to the unity forged through shared struggle. Mira's pride was evident in every precise movement and every triumphant smile from her students. The old divisions that had once dictated who could protect whom were dissolving, replaced by a collective strength born from courage and mutual respect. As the day wore on, the city seemed to pulse with new life. Conversations between former nobles and mechanics, artisans and soldiers, filled the air with ideas and laughter. The streets, once shadowed by fear and suspicion, now glowed with possibility. Yet beneath the celebration, there lingered a quiet question that none dared ignore: how to sustain this fragile peace and ensure that the sacrifices of so many would not be forgotten nor repeated. Elara and Kale, standing side by side, recognized the weight of this responsibility. Their love had helped bridge a chasm once thought unforgettable, but the work ahead would require patience, wisdom, and unyielding commitment. The city was healing, but its heart still beat to the rhythm of change, unpredictable, sometimes faltering, but always moving forward. In the twilight, as lanterns flickered to life and the stars began to sparkle above the floating city, Mira returned home, her hand firmly held by her lovers. Joran joined her later, sharing news of new projects and the steady progress of reconciliation. Elara and Kale watched from the garden, their smiles reflecting the quiet joy and determination that filled their souls. Tonight, the city was a tapestry woven from countless stories, stories of pain, hope, love, and courage. And though the path ahead was uncertain, one truth was clear: together, they would build a future where flying dreams were no longer bound by caste, where hearts could soar freely across the endless skies. As the stars blinked overhead, Elara whispered, "This is only the beginning." Kale squeezed her hand gently, "And we'll face it together." The promise hung between them, a beacon in the night, lighting the way to a new dawn. Beneath the heavy skies of the floating city, where steam vents hissed softly and the faint hum